very privileged role, and I think the same applies to everyone in this room. I think we have a very privileged role where I work in a commercial organization. We're listed, we look at profits, we look at revenue, we're talking very real numbers and outcome. But we also have a priority to look at what we take and what we make, how can we kind of like put that into a cycle and also give back. And I think that is one of the that puts me and everyone in the room right here in a very special place, because we can talk about the partnerships. We can think about the creative, crazy ideas sometimes. So think about what we can do so that 1 + 1 is more than 2. Like if I was talking 1 + 1 is more than 2 to my compliance colleagues right now, I would get in trouble in a banking kind of setting. But in this room, that is exactly what I want to set the frame for. And that is something that I truly value as well, because in the presentation, the short presentation, I hope, we'll be talking about some of the partnerships and ideas that we have, either with partners or fellow corporates. Because I kind of feel that there is no ownership or selfishness or cordoning off areas in kind of like community space. It's about sort of like, okay, what do you have? What can I have? Can we add them together and make it better? Or perhaps, hey, you have something that I actually never thought about, or I cannot bring to the table. So is this something that we can do together? And I think more importantly, today we also have our partners here with us, and I hope we'll be able to catalyze some action. So Sri, you mentioned about who wants to volunteer to do community series in the future. I think that's one. I think also we have AIC who will be speaking about Merdeka generation. I think that speaks a lot to myself, some of my colleagues and friends who are in that generation, and with Pioneer generation, that was my parents. So I think having that communication, I think having policies is great, but having that communication out is hugely important. And for companies, how can you help roll this out to your colleagues or employees who are eligible and able to enjoy this privilege? We also have with us NPC to talk about the research. So I think good research and good data, that forms the foundation of decision making. And for me, in a company, it helps me a lot, because it helps me to frame and rationalize my spend. It helps me to also be able to look at how then I measure the impact. So I think this is hugely important. I hope everyone will get something out of there. And I think it's kind of scary, because here we are sitting in Singapore. In 2030, 1 in 4 of us would be 60, 65. And another 20 years, 30 years down the road is 1 in 2. The sort of burden and taxes and the sort of social system that we'll have, I can't even imagine. I will be one of the people who will be enjoying and being a burden to the people in the taxation then. So I think this is a bit of a paying it forward. And then of course we have RSVP. And thank you, Dreaming, for coming today as well. The guys at RSVP, I thought, are the most energetic bunch of people I have ever met. And they are actually a lot older than all of us in the room combined. So it's about senior volunteerism. How do we harness the energy of our seniors to work with us? Seniors are not just recipients. They can actually be a giver and a force for good. So I think that pretty much is what we are talking about today, and I should have put this up, I guess, before that. So that's a here, but I think it's probably better if we go through the presentation. And what I wanted to do is, I was told that I had to talk a little bit about something, and I'm just going to flash it really quickly, because I think these are actually pointers or things that you do in your company already. And I think in the MBPC Company of Good, there has always been a lot of discussion about what do you do as strategic community investment, how do you measure the outcome, how do you set yourself up for success. So I'm going to flip through the slides, maybe talk through some key points. But if there was anything that anybody wanted to delve in a little bit more, then let's just put up your hand. It's very, very casual and interactive here. Okay? So this is my propaganda slide, so bear with me. It's just a little like, overview of what the bank is about. And I think all of you would probably be familiar with what the bank is as a retail organization. But I think what's really interesting about us is actually this. 90% of our income actually comes from developing markets. This is something that I never really talk about when I go to MVPC events, but this is actually really the basis for why we do what we do. 90% of our revenue actually comes from markets that will experience the highest rate of GDP and economic growth, but they are also at highest risk of climate change, of social risk, of all the issues around child labor, around bad air pollution, around not having safe and clean water to drink. These are actually the markets that have all these problems. And I think that's really a driver in order for us to do something about it. But the other way, if you think about it from a very commercial business sense, is if these communities do not thrive, in 50 or 100 years, the bank actually cannot survive because these markets will no longer be profitable. The people will not have economic spending power. This is actually to our own demise. So if you look at it from a do-good perspective, but you flip it on the other side and say, hey, what does this mean to my markets and my potential consumers or customers? That is a very practical reason, and that's the reason why we are able to stand in the boardroom every year to say, I need a budget. My budget to do community investment is backed by certain research and certain data, and this is how I rationalize it. And I always feel that this is the best way to make a case. I mean, I think the warm, fuzzy, nice, huggable aspects around CSR, I think it's great. But I think we should also be able to stand up and tell the other side of the story. So very, very quickly, these are the 3 pillars around Standard Chartered. I think one of it is community investment, which we all know very well. The other part is, as a bank, we have a very big focus on economic contribution to the society. It could be through employment, it could be through deals that we originate with our clients. It's the way we support SMEs in the economy. So these are the ways, as a bank, I can contribute. If you think about it, a bank actually has no product. I mean, I don't have shampoo to give, I don't have pharmaceuticals to distribute. We are essentially offering a solution, and it is about client relationships. So that's where we do. And then at the bottom left, we have being a responsible company. I always call this a housekeeping. So how do we make sure that there's no financial crime, there's compliance, we're treating our customers fairly, we're not selling like a 10-year product to a 75-year-old customer. So these are the things that we take note of in terms of housekeeping. So I want to talk a little bit about aging, and why don't we just take a quick show of hands. How many of you here are involved directly or indirectly in the theme or focusing on the theme of aging as part of a community project? Okay, so I think that's relevant, and this issue is real. I mean, later the team will be talking more in details about it, but this is very real. And in 2012, it was a very interesting year for us because that was when we converted our blue IC to a pink IC. So that was when Standard Chartered Singapore was subsidiarized in Singapore. So we have been here for, this year is actually our 160th anniversary in Singapore. So, but we've always held a blue IC until 2012 when we subsidiarized our operations here. So we thought that it would be quite interesting if we could create a community project just uniquely for Singapore, because we had all these projects from global investment teams. We did HIV because Africa was a very big part of our footprint and it was a very big issue. We did avoidable blindness. In Singapore, we were able to activate it, but only to a certain extent. So we thought, can we do something that's very uniquely Singapore? And then we selected aging for all the reasons. And this was something that we started doing. And when we started, it was very basic. How do we help them meet the needs in their daily lives, medical needs, screening, etc. It was nice. There was all this warm and fuzzy volunteering. Our staff went all out, and it was very gratifying. I think that is one of the things that spur people on. You go for a volunteering experience, it's easy, it's accessible, and it actually touches you in a certain way. Be it on your personal values, be it from team bonding, be it for something that you learned from your the counterparty on the other side. But people will keep coming, and it was all hunky-dory until this gentleman decided to give Singapore a very, very big gift. He decided to give us the gift of proper medical care if you were part of the pioneer generation. And it means that medical care and basic needs were institutionalized at a government level. So where does this leave us as a corporate who was giving, daily necessities, medical screenings and stuff? It is a very good problem, but it sort of gave us a new thing to think about is, are we still relevant, at this point? So then of course we did the whole trying to figure out where our position was gonna be, how we're able to contribute, how we're gonna add value still. there is no way I'm gonna beat an $8 billion fund. I mean, really? So this was what we decided to do. So I think there were a few prongs that we decided to take. We decided to take one route where the needs of the society were telling us. We were talking to different NGOs, we were talking to our different partners. They were telling us, basic needs, great. Think of the Maslow hierarchy, yeah. Basic needs, hugely important. But as you move that up, there are a lot of other things that you need to think about. The social inclusion, the mental well-being, the affinity or the network. That's something that is a little bit more intangible, and also it takes a village rather than just a government policy. So that was one way that we started, and that was one area that we delved into. I must confess, it is actually quite hard. So the Befriender program that we're doing with Southeast CBC, I always call it a high value, and you go very, very deep, and you form very meaningful relationships, and you actually have volunteers who are very, very highly committed. But the numbers are very small. And it is, if you want to measure impact in a traditional way of, so how many people do you have this year? What's your footprint, etc. They don't work. So I think the lesson that I took out of it is, how do we reframe so that what is success? So it's almost a bit like, when we ask Singapore for kids and education, what is success? Is it getting straight A's all the time? Is it being able to score your best score at PSLE? Is that your success? Or would you reframe it in another way? So that was one of the considerations that we actually need to think about. And to be honest, we didn't see that coming on set. We were pushed into it. But I think that gives you certain learnings and lessons as well. We tried to go digital. So we came up with this app in 2015 to help our volunteers talk to our beneficiaries. If you have come up to our office, you'll see that actually our work staff is very international. So we have a lot of people who don't speak Teochew, Hokkien, dialect, or Mandarin. And it was actually quite hard to do volunteering in a certain way because to a certain extent, you can still do it, but then that level of interaction. So we had this little app that helped our colleagues, and interestingly, we helped a lot of Singaporeans who were born in the 85 and onwards to learn how to say simple words of dialect, how are you today, and all of that. So that was quite interesting. This is one of my favorite projects, but I could be very biased. This was a brainchild that we hatched with Samsung Supplies, who is also an alumni from the Company of Good. So what happens is, to be honest, we wanted to be able to help. So we have budget, and we were thinking, how can I squeeze my budget to do something that's meaningful and create an infrastructure or create a legacy that we can leave behind, so that it goes on even after my 1 year, 2 year, 3 year project. So, and this is a lesson actually we took from our own global community, because I mentioned about avoidable blindness. That was a global project that we were doing. And our focus then was, we started out with saying, how many cataract operations can we do? Our first question, and help people regain their sight. But at the end of the project, we were asking, how many communities can we build medical facilities for? That we can train medical practitioners, nurses and doctors. We can create a supply of patients. We can have people, and you must imagine a lot of the China, India, the emerging markets, it's not like Singapore. It's not like, you take a taxi, it's like 25 minutes and you're on the other side of the island. They are places where they have provinces, they have cities that have no infrastructure or roads. I have taken a bus literally for like a full day just to get to the edge of the city, and then we will have to rest because then we will continue the next day. So how do we build little communities so that you have easy detection centers? We call it 医疗站. Or you could get like early detection that's quick and dirty, and then you refer cases upwards to a city level, to a province, etc. How do you create infrastructure such that the best measure of our success is after the 3 years, they are independent and they run on their own. They can get a supply of patients from the peripheral cities or counties so that the doctors are not standing there twiddling thumbs. They'll be getting a sort of revenue from a government grant so that there's treatment and it flows along by itself. So that's sort of the thinking behind the Changi Prison Project. So we took the money, Samsung were the F&B guys and they were the experts at this. They built out a kitchen in the prison so that they could train with the investment that we took, and we front load the investment because it's a little bit like vaccines. You can't vaccine half of the population and then let everybody mix together and then vaccine the rest slowly. You must one shot do and then be able to reap it. So we front-loaded the investment for this so that we built the prison kitchen that would recruit inmates for training, and if they were able to complete and they were eligible, there is a career path or employment at least for them after they come out. And I think the research around how important it is to have gainful employment to kind of like ease yourself into the community, ease yourself back to the family that you haven't seen, that employment is really the key. It's not about the handout per se. So this is what we did. And in the process, they were cooking food that we were donating to all the different elderly homes and all that. So instead of cutting a check for X dollars to say, nah, I'm gonna give 100,000 meals for a year to this, I am taking the money equivalent to say, let's build this thing so that the pipeline for the food and the production of the food is continual. It sets up an ecosystem in that sense, and you are actually churning out a pipeline of people who are able to be trained and able to get out into society to work. So that was the framing of this project. And I highly encourage everyone to sort of look at your partners or neighbors or friends at the fellowship to kind of see, hey, what are the things that we can possibly do together? This one was a funny example because we always do, this is tapping internally within the bank. And I'm just giving examples of crazy ways how we find money. Internally within the bank, we have marketing programs. So like if you sign up for a credit card right now, there probably will be advantages. But you know, it's the sort of programs that we run where you sign up for a card, you get maybe a rebate. You sign up for a card, you get a, I don't know, Iron Man suitcase or something. So, but there's a rule in Singapore, and this was a rule that we tapped on, because the CIB, you need to register all your campaigns and promotions with the CIB, and if there's any excess money from your campaign, you cannot roll it back. You must donate it to charity. So how we decided to do is, can we collect all these things so that we can strategically give? If you think about it from a cost center perspective, it's sunken cost. They have already written it off as a budget that they had to give. So we were just trying to collate everything together and give it smarter, or give it in a way that it really meets the needs of people who needed it. So that was what we did, and that was quite fun actually, because we could bundle volunteering, we could bundle a lot of happy people together, and yet we were able to help people choose what they want to get. So I think this is one of the aspects that I thought giving was very interesting, because we realized people don't really want goodie bags in pack. You know, they want to exercise a bit of a choice of what they can take, and I think being able to integrate that in the planning is a nice thing to do. Yeah. And of course, going down the digital route, partnership with IMDA to teach people how to do seniors about digital literacy. I think this rollout has been done. IMDA has partnered a lot of corporates on this, and this is actually really not hard. So if anybody is interested to do this with IMDA, let me know. What we did was we got our IT department to own this. So internally, so I'm talking about another aspect about community investment, which is rallying your own troops. So we got our IT department to own it. They were the ones who were responsible for sending the people out. And it's not so much because, and there was a little bit of relevance because, yeah, these IT guys, they would all know how to use different gadgets and stuff, but they were not complicated IT requirements. But the fact that they owned it, that ownership, Carolyn and I, we hardly need to manage this program. It's kind of like self-run and they do it by themselves. And of course with RSVP, so it's about, like I mentioned earlier before, it's about unlocking that force, unlocking that potential of seniors as a force for good. So I think we keep thinking about seniors as recipients, people want to give goodie bag to, then we give them the 5th Milo can in the house, and then you see it and they tell you, I actually don't even cook, I get a 10-kilo packet of rice. So, but the thing is, they are also people, I mean like, they are people that we can learn something from. There's a mentoring program that RSVP has with children, and I hear stories about the uncle, auntie, yeye, nai-nais that the kids will call. I hear about the story about how we want to build a pipeline of senior volunteers. And this is very personal because my dad and mom started quarreling more when my dad retired and had nothing to do. This is real, you know, this is real. I think that even with our own spouses or other houses, when you don't see, you don't what, right? But when you see, there's a lot of things to say. So I think like, how do we plan for our own retirement? If you were at the age or you had colleagues, you had a workforce who was in the age to think about what you're going to do in the 5-10 years. Would volunteerism be something that you want to think about? Is this something that RSVP can bring to your office as a bit of just to let you know, let your colleagues know that there are options around this to pick up? So that's something that we can think about. So in short, I thought that we should summarize this a little bit. So about building the ecosystem. The ecosystem is around, I think, the management budget and I think the management direction. Because sometimes top-down, the management vision is important. And it determines also the values and how much you're willing to do. So I think this is hugely important, but it's also the staff engagement. So people are very prone to responding to rewards, responding to positive experiences. So I think it's about thinking how you bring that back. It's about the basic infrastructure. So how do they look for opportunities? So we have about 7,000 people in China. We do about 4,000 plus volunteering days a year. So somebody once asked me, why don't I count my volunteering in terms of hours? Because I said, when I say like 4,000 days, it's actually about 32,000 hours. It sounds a little bit fake. But we actually calculate it through our HR system. So it's almost like log leave. If you do an ED event that's less than 4 hours, it's half a day. And you have to sort of like get your line manager to approve. So that was what we do. We have a bit like a gym system. You know how like when you go to gym or go for yoga, you go on your app and you see which class you want to go, how many slots are there, etc. So we have a bit of a self-service system, not as fancy and nice to use as the gym apps, but it's very basic, functional. It tells you what events are coming up, how many people do we need, how can you sign up. And some of the sign-up events, we actually outsource it to our partners. So for example, with Minds, our staff will RSVP directly, as in we don't even get involved. So it helps take the load away from our team as well, because then our team is not an events team. I am not organizing things for people to do all the time. It's about that it gives us time to go and think about other crazy ideas to formulate. And I spoke about responding to positive experiences and recognition. So I think this is hugely important, and it's just basic psychology at work. And this is our annual, we have an annual event where we recognize all our volunteers. And then there'll be some teams who tell me every time they go for a volunteering thing, it's a bit like an off-site, it's a bit like a bonding event as well, so it's quite nice. So that's my little piece for today. I think I sort of kept to the timing. Is there any questions, anyone, very quickly before we move on to the next segment? I've been so clear. Okay, so, and with this, can I invite Iman?
Thank you.
Thank you.